Dark Force Rising was released in 1992 and was written once again by Timothy Zahn and takes place directly after the events of the first book, as we learn that Admiral Ackbar has been arrested for treason against the New Republic, and so it's up to Han Solo to go out on his own journey to figure out what is going on and clear Admiral Ackbar's name, all while Luke is on his own journey to find an ancient Jedi Master, and Leia is on her own journey as well, finding more recruits for the New Republic. But while this is all going on, there are talks of this missing Katana fleet of 200 ships from the Clone Wars that could be used to either annihilate the Empire or destroy the New Republic. So I was a big fan of Heir to the Empire. I thought that Zahn's writing was just absolutely fantastic and really fit into the Star Wars universe at large. I loved his description. I loved his character work with everybody. It truly felt like a Star Wars story, and that's what I absolutely just loved about it. I just could not put that book down. And so I was really excited for this sequel, but also a little weary that it might not live up to what that first book was. And I can safely say that this not only was a great book, but I think it was even better than Heir to the Empire. Dark Force Rising is a much different book from Heir to the Empire, where Heir to the Empire was truly just a basic Star Wars story. This one really focuses on a mystery. There is a lot of mystery in this book. Who is Joruus C'baoth? What is the missing Katana fleet? And all these different things. And I think Zahn really builds upon that in this book. There was never a dull moment in this book at all. I enjoyed every moment, and the entire story just kept ramping and ramping up until it eventually exploded in an amazing finale that I just was so enthralled by. I was so satisfied in what he was able to do. He evolved what he had written in that first book, because I had some problems with that first book, even though I particularly loved it. There were some dull moments in that first book, but I don't find any dull moments here at all. I think every character is utilized to their complete potential, especially the character of Mara Jade and Card, which in the first book they were introduced, and I don't really think we got enough of them in that first book. They didn't really play into the story that much until the very end. But here they are throughout the story, and Mara Jade in particular, I just absolutely love this character, as, you know, she was the Emperor's hand, and now she is working sort of with Luke Skywalker, which is somebody that, you know, she wanted to kill. She's been trained to kill this whole time. And so it's really fun seeing her conflict as she makes very different decisions in this book than she would have otherwise, and it really tests her character as well. I also really like what they do with our main cast of characters here, especially with Han. Han really takes a central role in this story as he is trying his best to figure out what is exactly going on and who framed Admiral Ackbar, and it leads him down a rabbit hole of discovery as we get introduced to this faction of the Rebel Alliance that detracted from the Rebel Alliance in the beginning. And it's this new group of rebels that is really intriguing, and it shows that the Rebel Alliance at the beginning wasn't exactly perfect. There were people that disagreed with each other, and the character in particular, Bel Iblis, who is a member of this group, he doesn't particularly like what Mon Mothma is doing, and he feared that she might become a dictator after the Emperor, and I think that's really intriguing. It adds some depth to a lot of these minor characters in the original Star Wars movies, which I think is really cool. I also love Leia's story as she goes to the Noghri home planet, as she tries to attempt to bring them from the Empire into the New Republic, and she has to do this through a lot of ways of being extremely respectful, but also tell them that the Empire is using them and exploiting them for their own gain. And I think it's just an incredible little story for Leia to be on as she grows as a character, and I absolutely loved it. But the stuff that really steals the show in this book are the stuff with Luke Skywalker and Jedi Master Jorah Sabath, who is this ancient Jedi Master that we were introduced to in the first book. And we see his Jedi training ways are very different from what we learned from Obi-Wan and Yoda. And Luke even talks about this a little bit, that he's a lot harsher because he really sees the Jedi as judge, jury, and executioner. And so he attempts to turn Luke to the dark side by teaching him these ways. And of course, the training is interrupted. Thankfully, Luke does not turn to the dark side, but that stuff was so incredibly good, and I wish there was actually more of it in this book because it only takes up about 2 chapters, but they are extremely well done. Also, we get the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is absolutely amazing. He was a great villain in that first book, and he is even more sinister and evil in this book. And I absolutely loved how cold and calculating he is, especially since he's 5 steps ahead of everybody in this book. And it's kind of cheesy in a lot of ways, but Zahn writes Thrawn so incredibly well that you absolutely believe it from beginning to end. Guys, I overall just really loved this book. I loved the mystery element to it. I loved what it did with the characters and how it developed and evolved them in new and interesting ways. It made you think about different things about Star Wars that you wouldn't have thought of initially. I love the idea that the Rebel Alliance wasn't perfect, that there were some detractors from it. I think it's really cool. It makes this Star Wars book incredibly rich and complex with so much detail. The space battles are amazing. The fighting is just visceral and so fun. Now, in terms of negatives with the book, I don't really have too many negatives. Many of my complaints are fixed in this book that were apparent in the first book. As I said, the pacing of this book is so well done. I think it works incredibly well. I think there's not a dull moment in this book. It just ramps up to 11 and stays that way till the very end. I was incredibly invested in it. Now, one complaint from the first book that does carry over is there are moments where Zahn likes to remind us of things that happened in the previous book by elaborating on things that are happening in this book. Like, Luke will be like, oh, this reminded him of this one time in the original trilogy, and it's kind of goofy, but it's just a minor complaint, honestly, because I think this is kind of a perfect Star Wars book. It really evolves the story in a very interesting way. It develops our characters and sends them in new directions that I didn't see coming. Now, I will say that the story is a little familiar. The beats are familiar to even the first book. I noticed that a lot of times, but overall, it did not ruin my enjoyment of this book at all. I absolutely love this book. I had a blast with it, and I cannot wait to read the 3rd book in this trilogy. But anyway, guys, with all that said, I'm going to give Dark Force Rising a 9 out of 10. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I enjoyed doing this. I'm glad I'm finally gotten back into reading these Star Wars books because I just had to take a break from them. I got a little burnt out, and then with school happening and everything, but I'm finally back into it. I'm going to be reading more Star Wars books soon. Now, I'm not going to be continuing on with The Last Command just yet, which is the last book in this trilogy. There's a couple of novellas that came out between Dark Force Rising and The Last Command called the Jedi Prince series that I'm going to review soon. I don't know if I'm going to be reviewing those individually or if I'm going to review them all together. It will just depend on how I feel after reading all of them. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review.